Hello guys, let's answer the question, can string be null in C#? Let's start by describing the difference between value and reference types in C#. So value types are the types that are passed to a function by value, like byte, short, int, long, float, double, boolean, char, but also datetime and enum, which might be surprising to some of you. And the reference types are passed to a method by reference, like string, any array, like for example array of integers, any object, any custom class that you write, delegates and dynamic types. So value types cannot be null, so at least by default, and reference types can be null. So to answer the question, can string be null in C#? Yes, it can, because it is a reference type and it can be null by default. But what are we going to do when we want to insert a null value inside an integer variable? We have to use nullable types. So we can have nullable value types by adding a question mark to the definition of integer, and we can have nullable reference types also by doing the same thing, adding the question mark to the definition. You can ask, why would you create a nullable reference types when reference types can contain a null value by default? You do this to tell the compiler that this given variable may have a null value in it, and you won't check and, for example, throw an exception when it happens. So the compiler must be aware that it can contain a null value, and it will warn you about this during the compilation process. So to give the compiler a different message, to inform the compiler that this given variable won't contain a null value, you use the null forgiving operator, which is an exclamation mark. But it will be much clearer for you to understand when I show you the example. Alright guys, so I opened the .NET Fiddle application, which can help you to test small fragments of C# code. I put the compiler to the .NET 5 version because the nullable types and null forgiving operator were added in .NET 8. Okay, so we have two classes. We have a public person class and a public address class. The address class has a public nullable string property street and a constructor which inserts a value in this property. The person class contains a public property called address of type nullable address, and also sets the value of this property inside the constructor. So in the main method, I instantiate a person variable of type person and give inside the constructor an object of type address with the street property initialized to a string street. And after that, I try to get to this value by writing person.address, so getting inside this address property, and then .street, which means that I'm getting the value of the street property inside. Then I'm console right-lining the street value, and let's see what happens. So obviously the console window shows us just street, which is the value that we've instantiated. But what would happen if I didn't use the exclamation mark? If I didn't use it, the compiler would show me that this reference may possibly contain null value. This address property was instantiated as nullable. So I told the compiler that this property can contain null, and it shows me a warning that possibly I am referencing address which may be null. So to avoid displaying this warning, I can tell the compiler that this property is for sure not null.
with an exclamation mark, and this warning disappears. I know that it won't be null because I know that I instantiated with an object, and I passed a valid value to the constructor. So we used in this example the nullable reference types by adding the question mark to the name of the type, and we use the null forgiving operator by adding the exclamation mark when accessing a nullable reference type. I hope this video cleared those concepts for you, and I hope to see you soon.